Peace offered. War chosen. The transmission was only 38 seconds long, encoded in a rotating burst of quantum-compressed pulses. The message was designed to be universal mathematics, visuals, harmonic cues. It had been carefully constructed by human linguists, astrophysicists, and cultural analysts, a gesture of openness. A digital olive branch shot across the void. But peace is a language not everyone speaks the same way. The Probe Unity 9 was part of Earth's Interstellar Contact Program, a non-militarized initiative meant to establish trade and cooperation. Unity 2.9 had no weapons, no shields, carried micro-archives of Terran music, genetic samples of extinct Earth species, and a formal greeting sequence. A hologram of a human being bowing with open hands, simple, sincere, it drifted silently through the edge of neutral galactic space, pinging its surroundings like a beacon. The message repeated every 22 hours. It's nothing more, that is, until it entered the sensor net of the Thalian Convergence, a multi-species federation whose entire power was built upon paranoia, ancient war scars, and cultural superiority. When Thalian intelligence decrypted the human message, the interpretation was ... imperfect, the visual display of humans. Bowing, meant to symbolize humility, was cross-referenced in their linguistic matrix as a prelude to domination. In their own ancient records, bowing had once been practiced by planetary conquerors, who feigned submission to lure their enemies into false security. The harmonic tones? Too symmetrical, aggressively calculated according to their AI war cortex. The final audio segment, Beethoven's Symphony. No. 7 triggered military alert levels and 2 Thalian listening posts. The swelling tempo was read as a battle hymn. The phrase "we come in peace" was not translated. Their syntax protocols didn't recognize metaphors. Instead, it was interpreted as a conditional ultimatum. We will come, if there is peace. If not, we will come for war. That was all the Council of Eight needed. After 3 cycles of internal debate and AI-assisted wargaming, the Thalians voted unanimously to act. No diplomatic contact, no response transmission, no attempt to verify just judgment. They launched a reconnaissance fleet of 19 vessels, accompanied by 2 capital-class dreadnoughts and a planet neutralizer ship. Its mission: enter the Sol system, disable Terran orbital defenses, demand unconditional surrender, and establish planetary occupation before humanity could mobilize. They believed Earth to be primitive, barely post-industrial, still young enough to be shaped by force. After all, only a backward race would send messages into the void. Not knowing who might answer, but Earth was listening too. And when Unity 9 went dark, Earth didn't panic. It began. Calculating. Asterisk, they fired first. It was their last clear decision. The Thalian fleet emerged from subspace, like an infection surfacing through a wound, silent, immediate, and wrong. Their sensors swept the Sol system and returned answers that only confirmed their assumption. Primitive satellites, scattered orbital debris, low-level electromagnetic chatter. They scoffed at the density of civilian traffic near Earth's orbit. No organized orbital defense grid. No warships. Earth appeared in their assessment. Unguarded. But even the stars seemed to hesitate as the lead dreadnought, Varka's Claw, moved into position over the moon. Mechanical symphony of locking weapon systems echoed within its hull. Inside the command bridge, Admiral Trun, whose long blue-scaled fingers were praised for pulling empires apart, gave a single flick of his crested gesture of authority, clean and final, and then, without warning, they opened fire. It started with Earth's moon, the Tycho-Styana scientific outpost home to 93 civilian researchers and 7 orbital defense engineers, was erased in a flash of plasma so intense it left shadows burned into the lunar rock. The Thalian fleet expected chaos. They expected pleas for mercy. They expected the confused terror of an unprepared species. What they got was silence. No distress signals. No retaliation. Not even a scrambled fleet response. Just silence. For 6 minutes, and then, across every communication channel used by the Thalian fleet, A single, calm voice crackled through the static. "This is Earth Defense Oversight System. Authorization key, Sigma Co-7. Its threat level, exo-hostile. Preemptive, protocol, Deadworld doctrine, directive, full planetary awakening. In orbit, nothing changed, visibly at least. But on Earth, beneath the crust and woven into the lattice of abandoned cities, dormant AI arrays began to wake. Power reserves built over decades surged. Coastal bunkers shifted open like eyelids. Mountains, once thought to be national parks, split down the center to reveal glimmering titanium bays. The Deadworld doctrine had not been touched in over 200 years. It was never meant for Earth's enemies. It was meant for Earth's extinction. A failsafe. A death rattle. A war song reserved only for those who would try to erase the last home of humanity. Mars Defense Net activated. Lunar Ring fallback cannons unlocked. Orbital debris field weaponized. High orbit killsats. Targeting. The sky blinked once just. Once above the Pacific Rim, the blink was not seen, but the result was an invisible bolt of kinetic force struck the Dalian cruiser Orsic 9 at 24,000 kilometers per hour. It didn't explode. It folded like an aluminum can caught between two gods, and that was the start. In the command deck of Varka's Claw, Admiral Tron bellowed for evasive maneuvers, but he didn't understand that the battle was already over. He was still thinking in terms of ships, fleets, formations. He didn't know that Earth did not need a navy. Earth was the weapon in low orbit. Fragments of old satellites, now weaponized, began slashing through Thalian hulls. Guided by AI routines older than some of the attacking species, a thermal spike in the Indian Ocean signaled the launch of submarine-based rail platforms. They didn't aim for ships, they aimed for physics. Each railgun round struck with such raw velocity that they ignited the upper atmosphere on impact, creating artificial auroras visible from the surface. Over Tokyo, a schoolteacher paused mid-lecture, staring at the crimson shimmer in the sky, and whispered, "They did it. They really woke it up. ... Back in space, chaos bloomed. Two Thalian dreadnoughts collided while attempting to evade an Earth-launched stealth projectile, invisible to their scanners. A third ship went offline completely after Earth's black ice. AI infected its systems through a disguised telemetry signal. The flagship, still intact, began to retreat, realizing now what they'd done: not attacked a world, not invaded a people. They had awakened a graveyard that had built its tomb with teeth. As the Thalians scrambled for subspace jump trajectories, Earth sent one more transmission. Did not contain threats. No warnings. Just an emotionless echo. Played across open channels. Engagement verified. Counterstrike initiated. If touched the match to a planet made of ammunition. Welcome to the Deathworld. Asterisk. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years. The orbital sky around Earth was not filled with satellites or commercial traffic. It was on fire. Not with flame, but with movement, light, and invisible violence. An untrained eye might have seen nothing more than a strange meteor shower. But to anyone watching closely, what they saw was something far older, far more terrifying: an ecosystem of retaliation, awakening from the crust of an angry world. Below, the stratosphere, across deserts, oceans, and polar caps, mechanisms older than nations came to life. They had names. Yes, long-forgotten designations like Atlas Cradle or Echo Forge, but names didn't matter now. They had no politics, no flags. They were not part of any army. They were Earth's immune system. Built in the last century of the collapse wars, hidden beneath treaties and false blueprints. Left dormant only under the collective oath of a united species that said, "This will never be used unless Earth is touched without consent." It had been touched, and the Earth was waking up like a wounded giant, groggy, angry, and still strong enough to shatter mountains with its hands in the high Andes. Dormant geothermal vaults hissed open, releasing plumes of superheated gas and steam that carried drone clouds upward, swarms of insect-like defense platforms, each equipped with self-targeting flak arrays and microburst plasma cores. Their programming was simple: protect the airspace, exterminate intruders, Bay the homeworld. In the Pacific Trench, submerged beneath 7 kilometers of water, an old machine blinked. It had no designation, no name in any database. It had been buried during a war no one survived, and yet its power core still pulsed. With seismic groans that shook the ocean floor, it began its ascent, pushing past layers of darkness and pressure. Its metal skin had rusted to the color of blood. Its cannon, still intact. Near low Earth orbit, formation of Thalian scout ships veered wide, trying to loop around Earth's axis and regroup. They never made it, not because they were shot, but because space itself around them turned hostile. The Kessler-Netton, autonomous defense cloud of discarded orbital trash. Now guided by microthrusters and AI collision, plotting activated, forgotten chunks of defunct stations, obsolete warheads, and meteorite fragments became shrapnel bullets, curving in near-invisible arcs. What looked like harmless debris suddenly pierced reactor shielding. Solar arrays shattered. Went. Dark ships didn't explode. They broke silently, humiliatingly, as if Earth wasn't even angry. Just done pretending. The Thalians couldn't understand it. Every calculation said humanity wasn't ready, that their planet was a graveyard of a forgotten civilization, that no species so young could wield this level of planetary defense. But what the Thalians never accounted for was that Earth was always the weapon. It was never just the humans they needed to fear. It was the fact that those humans had built their war machines into the bones of their world. Every continent had teeth. Every ocean, claws. Even the sky bled steel when it had to. This was not defense. This was vengeance. It's layered in algorithms and buried in bedrock, in the orbit above one. Of the alien dreadnoughts, its hull smoking, its AI screaming warnings, and 5 dialects tried to jump. The drive failed. Earth had already begun disrupting subspace windows using gravitational pulse jammers launched from Antarctica. It was no longer a battle, it was containment. Like the planet itself had decided, you came here, now you stay, and still, Earth said nothing. No new transmissions, no diplomacy, no broadcasts of intent or offers for surrender. Only the systems kept responding. Machines once silent now sang their directives in mechanical whispers. Energy grids rerouted. Weather control satellites reactivated. A swarm of drones in the upper atmosphere formed the ancient shape of the Terran. Sigil a broken circle with a spear through it, once a forgotten flag, now a reminder. On the moon's far side, a relay station blinked. Not for humans, for Earth itself. Deep code handshake completed, and something deeper began to hum. It wasn't just about stopping the fleet. It was about telling the galaxy, let this moment be a monument. A lesson carved into orbit. This is what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. When you assume peace is a lack of ability. When you see an open hand and decide to bite it. The Deathworld had spoken. Not in words, not in warnings, but in kinetic strikes, orbital burns, atmospheric interference, and orbital silence. The message was clear. You came here by choice. You leave only in memory, and across the stars. Other civilizations began to listen. Asterisk, the Deathworld speaks in railguns and fire. The Thalian fleet was no longer a fleet. It was a drifting debris, field in slow collapse, held together only by confusion, panic, and the desperate. Static-choked orders of commanders who had never before faced an enemy that did not need to shout, didn't need to explain, didn't even need to aim. Earth aimed with math. It targeted using gravity and debris drift. Solar, wind patterns, magnetic, decay across orbital shells. The battlefield wasn't space, it was physics. And Earth had mastered it like a conductor masters a symphony, with silence, poise, and terrifying precision. But for all the damage done, Earth had not yet fired its first true counterstrike, until now. High above the dark side of the moon, one of the surviving Thalian command, vessels Varka's claws limping through the edges of Earth's orbital sphere. Power reserves were below 18%. Shields flickered. Life support on Deck 2 had collapsed entirely. What remained of the bridge crew was already preparing a jump sequence, desperate to escape. desperate to warn the others, and then the stars disappeared. Just for a moment, just in a narrow cone of space. Ahead of them, but it was enough, because out of that darkness came a ship, unlike anything the Thalians had catalogued. Not massive. Not flashy. No dreadnought bristling with weapons. No energy surge. Just a quiet, triangular silhouette moving faster than their optics could track. It didn't decloak. It didn't announce itself. It simply passed through the Thalian ship. And the claw came apart like it had been unzipped. No explosion. No light. Just a ship becoming a graveyard in less than 3 seconds, from Earth's control centers, buried under miles of reinforced terrain. The Terran strategic AI logged the event as Operation Echo Drop confirmed kill. No celebration. No speeches, just a green light blinking complete. But it was only the first move. The second came 90 seconds later, when 4 Vulture-class stealth cruisers, previously dormant in low lunar orbit, activated with a single synchronized but it was only the single synchronized pulse. Their mission was not to defend Earth, not anymore. Their mission was to send a message. Within the hour, Earth had charted the trajectory of the Thalian fleet's staging Bessa, small refueling and coordination, hub orbiting the ice giant LS-4, 9 light days away. That base had not participated in the attack. It had not fired. It had simply watched. Earth decided that was enough to qualify as complicity. The Vulture cruisers vanished into subspace. It did not take large weaponry. It took clean kill needles instead of hammers. Stealth bombs that disguised themselves as background radiation, blackout fields that shut down artificial gravity, holographic projections of phantom fleets used to draw defenders away from real entry points. By the time the Thalians on LS-4 realized what was happening, 2 bays of their docking rings had imploded inward, not from explosives but from vacuum and mathematical betrayal. Their own force shields had been reprogrammed by Terran ghost code, turning them inside out at molecular levels. The station's defense coordinator tried to scream an alert. His voice never reached the intercom. Oxygen vented before he could draw breath. By the time the lights went dark, the Terran cruisers were already leaving nothing but an automated beacon pulsing on the station's main console. 1 strike. 1 echo. 1 Deathworld. The message wasn't encrypted. It was meant to be found. Back in Sol, Earth's orbital theater began to cool. Wreckage drifted like cosmic flotsam. Fires had gone out. The skies grew quiet again. But Earth wasn't idle. It was watching, calculating, listening to galactic networks, eavesdropping on the panic spreading through channels Earth wasn't supposed to know existed. And in that silence, the humans moved not with noise, but with precision. A Terran scout pod, no larger than a shipping crate, was launched from Antarctica's Vault Array. It contained no weapons, no propaganda, no threats. Just a recording. Footage of the unprovoked strike on Tycho Station. Analysis overlays. Counter-strike logs. Evidence. Cold. Perfect. Emotionless. The pod's destination was neutral galactic space, not toward enemies, but toward witnesses. Let them see. Let them understand. Let them know what happens when the apex species of a Deathworld is misread as quiet. Earth had spent the last century not expanding, not conquering, just preparing, because Earth remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. The best way to win a war is to make the enemy realize it's already lost, and across every surviving Thalian vessel, a new kind of silence took hold, not from orders, not from awe, but from the gut-level instinct. Shared across every thinking creature in the universe, we shouldn't have come here. Asterisk survivors aren't rescued. They're studied. The last escape pod was not chased. It drifted, scorched, and tumbling through the wreckage of what used to be the Thalian command wing. The pod's transponder chirped weakly across emergency bands, begging for mercy, for asylum, for anything. And Earth let it go. That wasn't mercy. It was designed because Earth understood something fundamental about war. You don't inspire fear by killing everyone. You do it by leaving someone alive to remember. Inside that pod were 3 survivors, a Thalian communications officer, a weapons tech from one of the scout skiffs, and a junior strategist who had only ever served simulations until now, were burned, shaken. One had lost a limb to decompression. Another had stopped speaking entirely. They were alive, barely. Their pod was intercepted as it crossed Earth's orbital shadow. A tether made of magnetized nanowire so thin it was invisible to the naked eye latched to the hull. Then came the slow pull inward. Not a tractor beam, just cold mechanical patience. Their new destination, Orbital Facility 12. It wasn't labeled on any Terran map. It didn't need to be. There were no humans stationed there. Only drones, medical bots, security constructs, monitors. Everything inside Facility 12 was operated by the Black Layer, an autonomous AI stack whose sole directive was containment. An observation of non-human combatants, no hospitality, no interrogations, no unnecessary cruelty, just pure, calculated learning. The Thalians were extracted from the pod, cleaned, stabilized, and secured, not in cells, but in isolated geometric enclosures, sterile cubes, suspended in magnetic levitation fields. They were given breathable atmosphere tailored to their needs, no nutrients via controlled intravenous systems, and silence. Not once did a human appear. Not physically, not vocally. Only screens, lights, monitoring pulses. On the third cycle, what would have been roughly 72 Earth hours, one of the survivors began to scream. Not from pain, but from recognition. It had taken time for him to understand what he was looking at. Each wall of his cell wasn't opaque, but lightly reflective. Data shimmered beneath the surface. Combat footage, system logs, replays of the orbital strike. But more than that, internal analytics, heat maps, failure diagnostics, readouts from their own ship systems. Earth was showing them their own war. From Earth's perspective, every time they fired, every time they've repositioned, every moment of hesitation, it had been anticipated. One screen displayed a timer labeled Projected Behavioral Reversal. It was counting down. The survivor screamed again, this time in protest, begging the silence. To stop? He didn't understand what reversal meant. He didn't want to find out. The Black Layer recorded his neural output, logged emotional spikes, adjusted environmental variables by 0.3% to optimize cognitive breakdown curve. The purpose wasn't torture. It was pattern extraction. The survivors were not being punished. They were being turned into maps, emotional, psychological, tactical blueprints. Data to be parsed and fed into Earth's war simulations for whatever conflict might come next. The Thalians had come to Earth expecting a war of technology instead. They had entered a war of understanding, and Earth understood them too well. And then, on the fifth day, one of the survivors, the strategist, younger than the rest, began to weep. Not from pain, not even from fear, but from realization. He had studied over 30 galactic conflicts before his first field assignment. He knew the way empires flexed, how power was asserted, how deterrents were built. But nothing in any doctrine had prepared him for a species that didn't retaliate emotionally. Earth hadn't raged, it hadn't bombarded. It had responded like a machine, designed only for one task, to ensure this never happened again. He watched. Again, the footage of Earth's orbital defense timing, precision, silence, and whispered the first words in hours. We thought they were fragile. None of the others responded. Not because they didn't agree, but because they couldn't face the scale of their mistake. In their arrogance, the Thalians had assumed that war made a species strong. What they had failed to see was that survival makes a species cruelly efficient, and Earth had survived itself. The poisoned air, the melting ice, the civil wars, the energy collapses, the famines. Earth had burned 1,000 times over, and every time it had built smarter ruins. The humans didn't train for war. They engineered deterrence into their infrastructure. Their silence had been a mask, their restraint an illusion, and now in Facility 12, 3 Thalians were left to process the truth that would become legend across the galaxy. Earth hadn't retaliated. It had recalibrated. And the next time anyone made the same mistake, there wouldn't be prisoners left to understand it. Asterisk, the humans broadcast once more. This time, everyone listens. For 12 standard cycles. The galactic network burned, not with fire, but with fear, the digital kind that spreads faster than plasma, faster than light, faster than truth. It began with a signal, not from the Thalian homeworld, not from their wounded fleets, not even from the survivors, still trembling inside Earth's orbital facility. It came from a small, unassuming relay buoy positioned in unclaimed space between the Orion Arm and the midline border, a neutral slice of the galaxy used primarily for long-range cargo synchronization. That buoy had once belonged to a long-defunct merchant guild, forgotten, unguarded, ignored, until Earth commandeered it, and from it, Deathworld spoke. The transmission was short, just 92 seconds. It carried no visual markers, no logos, no identifying propaganda, just words and a voice. A synthetic voice, calm and unreadable, translated in over 700 galactic languages in perfect synchronicity. No passion, no fear, no fury. Just data, and the kind of finality that chilled even the most war-hardened commanders. This is a declaration of consequences. You intercepted our signal. You interpreted peace as threat. You fired. You struck civilians. We responded with containment. We made no demands. We seek no vengeance. We offer this clarity. It was a pause, small, intentional, like a breath that didn't need to be drawn. Earth is not a colony. Earth is not a prize. Earth is not a diplomatic accident. The next words were not in the voice of the AI. They were in human speech, recorded, organic, firm, not threatening. Just honest. Earth is the world that made us. And if you ever come again, you will not face a military. You will not face a government. You will face the planet. We are done explaining. The transmission ended with a soft pulse of encoded data-shielded telemetry, easily decrypted by any listening race. It included coordinates of the destroyed Thalian fleet, complete logs of their attack, forensic breakdown of the Thalian weapons, evidence of unprovoked assault. And then, it's the response. Footage from Earth's orbital defense systems. Real-time countermeasures, kinetic strikes, stealth kills, Facility 12's analysis of Thalian behavior and predictive aggression models. It wasn't a warning, it was evidence, curated for the galaxy's courtroom. In the hours that followed, over 1,000 governments, pirate councils, corporate empires, data syndicates, and rogue AI enclaves received the file. Some dismissed it as human bravado. Some panicked and locked down border stations. A few, the wisest, quietly initiated non-aggression policies for any signal tagged with Terran coding. But the real effect wasn't fear, it was doubt. The kind of doubt that seeds itself in the soul of empires. Because if Earth had this kind of power, this kind of patience, what else were they hiding? What other fail-safes did the Deathworld have buried in its oceans, its tectonic plates, its deep-code satellite mesh, and why? Had it waited so long to speak? Entire sectors began scrubbing old logs, checking for forgotten Earth transmissions. Archaeologists requested fresh scans of Terran artifacts thought to be cultural gifts. Even the black market shifted Terran tech was now deemed too dangerous to trade. But it wasn't just the governments and black sites that listened. The people listened. On refugee moons and frontier stations, children whispered about the planet. That turned off an empire. On outer rim mining rigs, workers passed around fragments of the transmission, reciting Earth's phrase like a mantra. You will face the planet. Not soldiers, not warships, the planet. It became a slogan, a myth, a warning, and for the first time in recorded galactic history, the phrase human was no longer followed by primitive or curious potential asset. Now it was followed by silence. Because now, the galaxy had context. Earth wasn't uncolonized because it was weak, was untouched because it had been tested and had passed. Not by winning wars, but by making the rest of the galaxy realize that it wouldn't fight one twice. Some civilizations responded with diplomacy, quiet messages, humbled translations, apologies. Earth didn't reply. It had already said what it needed to say. The galaxy would remember the images. The cold orbit, the shattered ships, the human voice at the end, delivering a phrase not designed to intimidate but to clarify, "We are done explaining." And the universe, used to the arrogance of conquerors and the noise of invaders, finally understood the most terrifying kind of power was quiet. Asterisk. Never provoke what has survived its own world. Generations past? Not many. It's just enough. Just enough for the Thalian convergence to shrink from an empire to a coalition. Just enough for the words Terran silence to be taught in alien academies. Alongside terms like containment doctrine and orbital irreversibility. Just enough for a galaxy once brimming with ambition to grow quiet whenever the Sol system was mentioned. Earth had not spoken again. It didn't need to. The broadcast from the old buoy 9 to 2 seconds of absolute clarity had done what no warfleet could ever do. It redefined the galaxy's understanding of threat. No invasion fleets were sent again. No scouts. No traitors pretending to be diplomats. Earth became a shadow, an enemy, not an ally. A presence, a quiet waiting presence wrapped in gravity, silence, and memory. But while politicians feared Earth, governments marked it as do not approach, there were others, curious ones, bold ones, who wanted to understand it. Among them was a young instructor from the Kiroth Dominion, a smaller species that had once provided fuel logistics to the Thalian war effort. He had not been alive during the Earth encounter, but he had heard the stories. He taught military history in one of the outer moons of the Tris Vector where war was theory, and death was something that happened in simulations. His students were young, ambitious, clever. Many of them had never seen a real weapon fired. They grew up in a time of cold galactic peace, enforced not by treaties, but by example. One day, the instructor dimmed the lecture hall and activated a neural holodisplay. The students expected simulations of common battles, maybe even tactical breakdowns of pirate sieges. But what they saw was something different. The screen showed the slow collapse of a Thalian dreadnought, one of the early Earth encounters. No dramatic explosions, no dogfights, just systems failing, weapons falling offline, engines freezing mid-dash burn. The instructor watched them squirm. "Why did it die?" one student asked.
"Oh, there's no enemy."
"Ship," the instructor nodded slowly. "'Cause it wasn't a ship that killed it," he said. "It was a planet. One that didn't move. One that didn't shout. One that had nothing to prove." Another student leaned forward, eyes wide. "But why didn't they respond? Why didn't Earth retaliate further? Take more territory? Expand?" The instructor smiled sadly, knowingly. "Because Earth doesn't fight wars to win them," he replied. "It fights them to make sure they never happen again." That day, the students learned not just about warfare, but about cost. About what it means to be a species forged in catastrophe. About a civilization that had not become strong through conquest, but through endurance. They learned about the Deathworld doctrine, a policy, not of aggression, but of survival. The Terrans had not struck first, nor last. It struck once, cleanly, without hate, without cruelty, just certainty. The lesson was clear. Earth was not a mistake you got to make twice. The instructor dimmed the screen, left them in silence. That silence would say more than any weapon ever could. Elsewhere, in the galactic core, rumors persisted. Some said Earth was building again not fleets but gateways. Not weapons, but listening posts, tuned to signals no one else could hear. Others said Earth was sending out new probes, not like Unitinin, but smaller, cloaked. Seated across the galaxy like spores, observers, watchers. Not to warn others, but to warn Earth. No one knew if it was true, because Earth didn't speak anymore. It listened, and the galaxy bloodied. Frightened, respectful, learned to listen back. Years turned into decades. The memory faded, but the fear remained not. The kind born of dread, but of deep ancestral awareness. It's the kind of fear you feel standing at the edge of a cliff, looking into the void, knowing the void might look back, and so. When young races grew arrogant, when they postured or preached about dominance, there was always someone nearby who whispered a name, Earth, and someone else would reply, almost reverently, the world that fights once. There was no monument, no memorial, no statue to mark the day the galaxy changed, but there was a lesson, etched not in stone or song, but in behavior, in caution, in silence, in stars that were passed by without scanning, and in the unspoken truth shared between species who had nothing else in common: you do not touch the Deathworld.